Welcome to the Mystery of Life. I'm Jo.
And I'm Jonny.
And today we're asking, what happened to the Springfield 3? So this is a case from the 90s, but it still draws a lot of attention. And we do or have had a lot of requests to cover this. And it's a bit of a weird one because it is well known, but also, like, not. I don't think, have you ever heard of it?
No, I think it'll probably be well known to those that are up on up on true crime.
Yeah.
But it's not the Night Stalker where everyone's going to know. They're not.
No.
It's not like everyone's going to know the name.
No. Okay. So just a quick note as well, as with all true crimes that we do, we can't necessarily cover everything fully in one episode. Anything minor I've left out should be covered in the blog post supporting this episode. And we cover the case lightly and we tell you our opinions. This isn't intended to be like a new investigation, you know. So this involves 3 women, Sherrill Levitt, Stacy McCall, and Suzie Streeter. Stacy was 18 and Suzie was 19. And on the 6th of June, 1992, they graduated high school in Springfield. Now, sometimes I'll give you some childhood history if I feel it has any bearing on the case. There's actually very little available here. And what is available, I didn't really feel like it did. So I'll put that on the blog.
Pretty standard upbringing then.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, you know, Stacy certainly. I will say that Sherrill was Suzie's mum. So, you know, we know a fair bit about both families, but nothing stands out to me. And anything that did, we'll talk about as we go. So let's do a bit of a timeline. Stacy and Suzie graduate. And we all remember that. School's out forever. You know, you're happy, you're excited. There's parties, there's a summer. It's good. And they decide that they're going to stay at a hotel in Branson, which is about 40 miles away. And the next morning they're going to go to a water park with all their friends. And this water park was like quite a big deal in the area. But a while into the evening, around 10:30 or so, they decided they weren't really up for the drive. I also wondered, like, at one point they drive home, and I also think surely there's alcohol involved. It's not mentioned, but like...
That's an assumption.
Yeah, it is. It is an assumption. But I don't know, like graduation parties. Anyway, they decided about 10:30. Stacy calls her mum and says, we're not going. We're going to stay at a friend's house, Janelle, and who also graduated with them that day. And it gets to like 2 a.m. and they're tired and they realise actually there's so many people staying at Janelle's house. There's not really a lot of room. We've all been there, you know, find a small area on the carpet. So they're not that far from Suzie's house. They decide to go and sleep at Suzie's house. They ask Janelle if she wants to come. She declines, but they make kind of loose arrangements to meet up the next morning. I say loose because, you know, it's teenagers, isn't it? It's like, I'll see you tomorrow morning. So they went back to Suzie's house, which she shared with only her mum, Sherrill. And they'd lived there since April, so not long, we're in June, but long enough to, you know, be settled. So the next morning, Janelle calls when Stacy and Suzie don't arrive. They had planned to go back to Janelle's house. They were all going to go to this water park together. There has been some discussion about whether or not they actually had plans to go to the water park, but obviously they had some sort of plan to meet up. I'm not sure it necessarily matters where they were going. You know, there's a bunch of kids involved. Someone was expecting them. I think that's all that really matters. You know, they were kids. They were supposed to be hanging out or going to the water park, whatever. They didn't show. So she wasn't too concerned initially. This was quite early in the morning. And I guess, you know, you got to remember as well, 1992, we didn't have mobile phones. So you either went round there or you relied on them answering their landline. And if they didn't, it wasn't really a concern because, like, maybe you were on the way, maybe you were in the garden. Like, it just wasn't as easy to get hold of people.
It certainly took longer for alarms to be raised, I think, because you weren't used to that constant, immediate contact. You were willing to let it be a few hours before you worried.
Yeah. After a few hours, she's made a few phone calls as well. She's called Sherrill's home, believing that's where they'd gone because that's what they said. There's no answer. She thinks, right, okay, maybe they've already gone to the water park. They'll go there on the way and see if they can pick them up. So Janelle and her boyfriend Mike, and this is now on the morning of the 7th of June, go to Sherrill's house to look for them. When Janelle and Mike got there, they found glass on the porch. It was from the porch light. The bulb itself hadn't broken, but like just the glass cover, you know, the bit you would unscrew to take the bulb out. They didn't think anything of this whatsoever. So much so that Mike thought, oh, Sherrill won't like that. She was quite a neat homekeeper. So he swept it up for her and put it to one side. Now, no one was home, but the door was unlocked. So Janelle assumed they must have already been at the water park. And, you know, she sort of opened the door, said, you know, is anyone here? No one was there. But she heard the phone ringing. So she picks up the phone. At first I thought that was weird. But then again, I remembered no mobile phones. And actually, I think I had a friend that definitely would have answered my home phone. He just walked into our house. He was like that kind of family friend.
Yeah, I do think it's a bit weird, but move on.
So she answers the phone. Maybe she thought like it was them. You know, maybe again, we're living in a world that we don't really remember.
No, but still, it is a bit weird. You've gone into my house and answered my phone.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. Also, it's like her mum's house, isn't it?
It's not there.
It's not like it's Susie's house. So I don't know. I did find that a little odd, but maybe they just had that kind of relationship. So I'm willing to, see over that. But when she answers the phone, it's this guy who's like saying weird sex stuff down the phone. And she's just like, oh, well, it's just a prank call, and hangs up. Again, I thought that was a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a weird coincidence as well that they were there for the phone call.
Yeah. Anyway, they go to the water park. Stacey and Suzie never show up at the water park. So when they're done, Janelle and her boyfriend decide to go back to Susie's house. And this time they find Janice McCall outside, Stacey's mum, looking for Stacy.
You had it going on?
Yeah, I knew. There's a lot of references to Stacey's mum in this, so get it all out now.
No, I'm done.
I also found a couple of interviews from Nigel Holderby, who was Susie's best friend at the time. It mostly gets reported as Janelle being the one to go home and raise the alarm, but Nigel definitely gave interviews and said she's been there. So at one time or another, there's quite a few people milling around this house now looking for the girls.
Oh, I bet the police love that.
Well, there are some reports as to whether or not Janelle actually went in, when she answered the phone, whether that was then or before. It was definitely then. There's actually police reports, and the statement she gave was that she went in, answered the phone, swept up the glass, went to the water park, came back. So I think we can be fairly confident that that's what happened, according to the police report, assuming we believe Janelle.
Yeah, unless Janelle did it.
Which I don't think anyone thinks, but we'll see. We'll see what you think when we're done. So they notice this time, obviously they've got a grown-up with them now. Stacey's mum's there, Janice. Sherrill, Stacy and Susie's cars are all parked outside. But apparently Susie's car was parked somewhere different. It was on the drive, but she never parked in this place. She had a spot that she always parked in, which I get because I do. We don't actually have assigned parking, but I always park in the same spot if it's available, don't I?
Yeah, the key is though, if it's available.
But it's her area. So the only way it wouldn't have been available is if someone was there when she got home at 2 a.m.
No, right, fair, yeah.
So they decide to take a look around. They go in. Obviously, they shout and try and get someone's attention. Door's unlocked. No one's there. So they have a look around. And in Susie's bedroom, they find the purses of all three women lined up on the floor. Now, if it were just Stacy and Susie's bag next to each other on the floor in Susie's room, okay, sort of fine, I get that. You were sleeping over. You're both going to be in Susie's room. You're both going to put your bags down on the floor. But why would Sherrill's bag be in there all lined up? And it's also not even like it's in the hall. It's not like it's near the front door where everyone might keep their stuff. Why would you put it in the kids' bedroom? They had their own bedrooms.
And who lines it up?
Yeah.
It's easy to accidentally line two things up. But when you start adding 3 or 4, then
yeah,
that's purposeful.
It makes no sense why, if they got home late, it makes no sense why the mum's bag would be in there. And Janice notices that the Sherrill's cigarettes were in her bag. The bag was open and there was money in it and the cigarettes were. Apparently Sherrill was quite a chain smoker, so it made no sense for her to go out without this bag.
No. And like you said, it was the 90s. No, their whole life was in that bag.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now I will leave the house with just my phone. But if I left my phone and my keys and my bag here, I'd have to take something. Do you know what I mean? I can't imagine going out without anything. Even if I'm just taking the dog around the corner, I'd still take my phone.
No, yeah. So, yeah. Especially females haven't always got the luxuries of pockets.
No. Pockets are quite a new thing. I feel like when I was growing up, I never had pockets.
No, and so I think that 3 girls all to leave their bags at home.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Or 3 females, I should say.
So they did find washcloths in the laundry with makeup on, and Stacey's jewellery was zipped in her shorts pockets, which was on top of her bag. So it is a bit like they came home and got ready for bed. So we have to assume that they did make it home. Their cars are there, their stuff is there, and they did drive from the party. I don't know if it was Janelle's party. They went to a few parties, but wherever they all were together, they drove from that party home. So they obviously made it there.
Yeah, they must have. And I would have thought that Susie's mum would have raised the alarm because I assume that Susie's mum knew they were coming as well.
Well, I don't know that she did because remember, we've got no mobile phones. They were supposed to be staying at a hotel. Then they were going to stay at Janelle's. And then they were like, oh, there's no room. Let's go home. Honestly, I don't know if I'd have rung my parents. I mean, you grew up in a world where you went out and got drunk and then went home. Would you have called your mum, aged 18, having graduated school, and told her that you were coming home when you weren't necessarily expected home? You'd just go, wouldn't you?
You would. If I was bringing friends, I'd more likely to.
Yeah.
I'm not the best example. But if you were a more respectful teenager, I imagine you probably would. And it seems like they're relatively respectful. I mean, the young lads around there sweeping up glass.
Yeah.
I think 18-year-old me would have set someone else's glass up for them.
So we don't know if she knew, though. We don't know for sure if she knew they were coming home, especially if they decided to come home at 2 a.m. She might have not wanted to wake her mum up.
But the bags couldn't get together without any interaction, though. Well,
I mean, this is all part of a mystery. It doesn't make sense to me at all why the mum's bag would be in the daughter's bedroom.
It also doesn't make sense to me
with her cigarettes as well. If you're a chain smoker, why wouldn't they be on like the table with you or whatever in the living room? Doesn't make sense. So, okay, right. So anyway, back to the house. You've got Janice, you've got Janelle, possibly Nigel. Some other people had arrived at various times. It's unclear to me exactly who was there. They reckon about 6 people. So I think people were like coming and going and checking on it.
Nicely contaminated crime scene.
Well, yeah. So then the dog comes out. The little Yorkshire Terrier called Cinnamon. And apparently it was reported as acting frantic. But I mean, Yorkshire Terriers are pretty frantic on the whole.
I mean, you can't take a famously yappy dog and like use that as evidence. Like, oh, this dog's playing up. It's like, yeah, it's a Yorkie.
I think they were like trying to say, oh, it's run back in and it's, but I think maybe it's excited. It misses its owners. Even if the owners had just genuinely gone out, like dogs get excited when you come home. I don't know. I don't know what we're reading into that, but that's what they said. They also noticed there was a new voicemail since Janelle and Mike had answered the phone earlier that day.
Still weird.
They listened to it. They listened to the voicemail. They thought maybe it was going to be them saying, we're coming home, which I find odd because why would you ring yourself and say we're on our way home? Why wouldn't you just ring Stacy's mum or Janelle's family? So that's weird. But anyway, it's this same guy leaving a voicemail now, talking like weird sex stuff. I couldn't get an audio of the message. I mean, I don't know that one of us would want to listen to that anyway, so I don't know exactly what it said. They all just describe it as lewd sex talk, which is a bit weird if you've got some rando ringing you and leaving voicemails. But also prank calls were much more of a thing. The whole like breathing down the phone thing has sort of died, hasn't it? Yeah,
caller IDs really fucked that up for everyone. Back when you could make a phone call and there weren't 30 systems in place to trace it, I remember getting prank phone calls at our house.
Yeah.
It was sort of like the swatting of the time.
Yeah. So they don't want to panic. Janice, Stacey's mum, is like, look, I'm sure they're on their way home. She's trying to remain calm. She doesn't really know what to do, but she is starting to panic. But she thinks, right, let's just wait here for a little while. It's not the first time we've heard this. They decide the best thing to do while they wait is clean. They clean the whole house. They empty ashtrays, which is a huge mistake because if you have got a friend around smoking, I know we didn't like DNA was in its infancy in 1992, but like it was still known about. They still took it. They still, even just like different brands of cigarettes and stuff might have been a hint. Like, no, they emptied all of that. They washed plates and dishes. They even fixed a blind that had been twisted round.
People boggle me.
I know, yeah. And I will, in their defence, I will say that like they're not really sure what to do. And also, remember, true crime documentaries weren't really a thing in 1992.
Yeah, but at the same time,
we all know now not to hurt a crime scene. I know it wasn't common knowledge in 1992, but surely just like common sense told you this might be a crime scene. Also, I know they're trying to think for the best, but
common decency and boundaries with these people.
Yeah, so that's my next point, right?
If I came home and I'd found that my friends had thought that I had left or something had happened to me, so they'd basically broken into my house.
Yeah.
They'd messed
the door was unlocked, to be fair.
Doesn't matter. Like, in the eyes of the law, it might not breaking in, but did I invite you in? No, you've broken into my house.
Yeah.
You've moved everything. You've gone through all my stuff. You've tidied up where I didn't ask to be tidied. You've basically insulted me for the way that I keep my house. Yeah. I've come home and now you want a pat on the back. No, get the fuck off my building. And why are you answering my phone? That's my mate Dave. He likes to call me and say weird shit. That's my thing.
Well, but that's so also as well, though, I thought like, I get that when you're Janelle or Janice, you're going around there looking for these kids. But why is it unusual that Sherrill's a grown adult? Like, has anyone even rang work? She was a hairdresser. I don't know if they were really, I'm sure they were open on Saturdays in 1992. Like, I don't know for sure. Because someone did ring on Monday. So maybe she just wasn't expected. I don't know. If this was me, if 18-year-old me had gone to look for a friend, I'd be like, oh, what if her parents come home? I wouldn't even be thinking about, oh, her parents must be missing as well. I would be worried about, like, getting them in trouble.
No, yeah, it's all just weird. Like, if you're worried about your daughter, go home and tidy your own fucking house, love.
Well, as the evening arrives and no one comes home, Janice is understandably concerned about where her daughter is. And her daughter had called her the night before about 10:30 and said, we're not going to the hotel anymore. We're going to go and stay at Sherrill's. So
if one daughter's calling one parent, why wouldn't the other
Well, that was at about 10:30.
Why wouldn't the other one call the other parent at that time?
They might have, but we don't know. So, it's not as if she was one of these kids that just had no regard for telling her mum where she was. She communicated. So she was worried now, Janice. And so she does then call the police. And the police do declare the women missing and say they're going to declare it missing with, they think there might be foul play. Foul play suspected is what they said.
What did they say when they said, oh, by the way, we've completely cleaned the crime scene?
Well, I can't imagine they were impressed. Like, I didn't find like a statement as such. But yeah, I've got to be honest as well. Some of the older cases we've done, police have been criticised as well, haven't they? Like, I don't think practice was quite as good. But yeah, I can't believe that no one thought at any point, like, what are you actually doing? What are you doing?
Take the crime away. Don't tidy other people's homes. It's rude.
Yeah, I don't know. So they involve the FBI and they do look, to be fair, they have dogs and organised neighbourhood searches. They even have divers in the nearby lakes and rivers. And within the first couple of weeks, they go hard. They really do put in a lot of work.
Well, yeah, there's a certain point where the effort won't be rewarded. And I know it sounds mean, but after 2 weeks, you can be fairly sure, and apart from extreme circumstances, that these women are probably dead.
Well, there's a lot of theories which we're about to move on to.
Because I'm assuming they've never found the bodies.
No, so that was 1992, and we don't know what happened to these women. They vanished. That's kind of it. Obviously, there's some theories and some things I'm going to tell you about leads and this, that, and the other, but ultimately, that's your story.
It is a weird one. It is. I was about to say there was no sign of a disturbance, but there was, but they cleaned that up as well.
Well, that would be the only sign of a disturbance, really, would be the glass.
The lights don't just break.
No.
You don't think things don't just explode.
No.
Something had to have, probably an attempt to, turn the light off.
Also, as well, the comment that Mike made about, Sherrill not liking it was because she did, try and keep a good home. This was, said to be her dream home. She'd been through a divorce, a couple, actually. And she worked hard to afford a nice house in what she thought was a safe neighbourhood. It meant a lot to her. She isn't just going to break the glass on her porch light and leave it there.
No, she's not going to abandon her dream home, and she's not going to run off with someone else's teenage children. And
briefly, before we move on to theories, they did put up, they reckon, around 20,000 missing posters in the area. It got quite a lot of media attention at the time, including the Oprah Winfrey Show and America's Most Wanted. So it does look as if it was fairly well covered. Everyone in that sort of town and area, they knew about it, and it went sort of nationwide.
I can't see I've got a picture of this neighbourhood, and I just can't see anything going by without at least one of the neighbours knowing about it.
It didn't have any houses attached to it either side. You could sort of get in and out without people necessarily seeing you. I've had a look at the road and I'll put some pictures on the blog. It's not like a tight-knit cul-de-sac, but yes, what you're imagining is a almost cutesy 90s neighbourhood where you might have the odd net curtain. I don't know if they really net curtains were a thing in America.
I just imagine that someone must have said, I saw a car there.
Well, I just want to talk about what we know and what the police sort of said they kind of knew, and a couple of questions that I've got, and then we'll go straight into theories. We do know that Sherrill was home at around 11:15 because she was on the phone to a friend for a while. This was said to be just a normal social call. The friend said that nothing unusual was mentioned. They just had a chat, as two women would do. And apparently she was painting a chest of drawers while talking to the friend. So that was all normal, and we know she was home then. Now, obviously, they don't know 100% that she remained home after the end of that call, but you have to kind of assume that she went to bed and was there when the kids turned up. The car was there, all her stuff was there, but you are making an assumption at that point. We do have fairly good information about Suzie and Stacy in that they know what parties they went to and what time they left, which was about 2 a.m, because they were seen throughout the evening at multiple parties by multiple people. I don't think this is a giant conspiracy by a bunch of teenagers. So I think we can trust them when they say, yeah, we saw them. And the smaller group of friends that said, yes, they left about 2 a.m.
No, there's no evidence to say this is some sort of Pretty Little Liars situation, this Hollywood. I say a lot, people, and especially teen, are terrible at keeping secrets. This Hollywood stuff rarely happens because someone rats the other out. It always happens. Yeah,
so again, I think we can be fairly sure of their last movements up until the point they left the party, and the fact that we think they got home because the cars and the stuff was there. Now, what might be more of a question mark is what sort of plans they had. That comes up a lot. the fact that they chose not to stay at Janelle's and then like, it was like whether or not they're definitely going to the water park the next day. I don't really think there's anything untoward there. I just think that's teenagers being like, we'll see you in the morning. It's 2 a.m. Like they obviously had some sort of plans and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that, especially when you're younger, you don't live your life by a strict schedule.
No, exactly. Especially you've just graduated high school.
You just say, we'll meet up tomorrow, we'll sort it out.
Yeah. Janice actually said that Stacy and Suzie had been good friends in grade school, but had drifted apart, just like kids do. But things get made of that as well. I don't think there's anything to make of it there. You drift apart and then you're at a party and you get talking. You'd be like, do you want to come and stay at my house because you can't sleep here? Kids fall out and make up quicker than any other type of human. One minute they're best friends, the next minute they're mortal enemies. But yeah, either way, they were friends. Everyone kind of accepts that. Now, I do think it's possible that Stacy and Suzie could have gotten into trouble on the way home, but there isn't anything to suggest this because it would have to be extremely well planned to then get both the cars back and the bags in. And then it was like Sherrill's house. So like, why involve mum? No one knew they were going back there until they literally decided to go back there at 2 a.m. So it wasn't like a pre-planned thing. So I just don't think...
It's a logistical nightmare.
Yeah. So I do think we can all agree that they probably got home. Like, I don't really disagree with that. But again, it is an assumption.
There's making an assumption based on evidence and there's making an assumption based on opinion. And
yeah,
the only place there's sign of any trouble is that house. There's a broken light. Their stuff is there. They're missing from that house.
Mm. Okay, so theories. We're going to start with abduction because I feel like it's like the most kind of obvious, and then we're going to do murder because there's two sort of tie in together. So I will say as well, in my opinion, I feel like it was easier to move people around in the 90s because at 2 a.m. with no mobile phones to track and less of an abundance of CCTV, especially in more sort of little towns rather than big cities, I think you could get 3 women out of a house at 2 a.m. without being noticed. Whereas I feel like if that happened where we live, which is quite heavily populated, there's a much higher chance someone would notice, and there's cameras. And we have like mobile phones and shit to track.
No, it's definitely easier. I mean, the further back you go in history, the easier it was to commit crime. That's just a fact. Like most masterminds back in from the 40s wouldn't stand a chance because they used to be able to rob banks with their bloody face showing and wanted posters were drawn,
Yeah.
But I think abducting 3 people at once, that's another logistical nightmare.
See, a lot of people have said this, and I actually wrote that.
Picture them as toddlers, not human. And you're just like, you're trying to keep 3 of them under control.
I wrote this, I agree, and I constantly kept saying, but I don't get it. It's so hard to control 3 women. There must have been like a group of them at the very least, and that's pretty hardcore to get a group of you involved for 3 what seems like normal women. But the police officer actually said you'd be surprised what people do when they've got a gun on them.
Well, that's another thought I just had, is that you don't need to get 3 of them. You only need to control 1 of them. You control them all because no one's going to let them go like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, kill my mum. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Especially if it's like the mum's saying, just get in the car. The mum's trying to obviously we don't know what happened, but you know, I think as well, you look to the grown up immediately, don't you?
Or if it's a family friend that they're used to seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. So there has been theories relating to abduction about being taken for human trafficking, which is possible. But then you have to assume it was a planned attack. This cannot have been random. I just don't see how it could have been random unless it was like a complete accident and somehow they managed to get away with it for all these years. Because it couldn't have been like an off the side of the road type abduction.
Why would you bother trying to take 3 middle-class people from a middle-class neighborhood to human traffic? And this is a horrible thing to say, but when you can go down to any red light district, any bad part of town, find tens of girls that are completely untraceable and unloved and unwanted and much easier to traffic. Why would you bother with a housewife with mortgages? And it's too risky. I don't buy it.
No, it does seem bizarre. And like I say, it would have had to have been very well planned, and it just can't have been because they literally did not plan to go home. So the whole thing just would have been really messy for a criminal to have planned. So it's got to have been like opportune.
Or it was planned, but the girls interrupted it.
Yeah. So you could look at the mum as both ways. Were they after the mum or was the mum collateral damage?
Either or. I think it's more likely that they came across something they weren't supposed to.
Because would that explain why Susie's car couldn't have been parked?
Yeah, the person who was doing the crime was there. and they came upon it. And he was like, well, I've got to kill these now, haven't I?
So 2 days after the women went missing, a witness from the neighbourhood came forward and said that she had seen a green van with a blonde woman driving, seemed like supposedly a bit distressed, and a male aggressive voice. She heard a male aggressive voice say, "Don't do anything stupid." When shown pictures, the witness pointed to Suzie as being the driver of the van, but nothing really came of it straight away. The police tried. They went in hard with this lead, because it is a pretty good lead, considering that's really all they've got. They even put a replica van outside of the police station and be like, have you seen this van? To try and jog people's memories of what they might have seen. The colour of the van changed a few times. They kept getting loads of tips then about vans, as you do. You know, you start sort of almost planting thoughts in people's minds, not on purpose. But despite all the effort they put into this lead, nothing really came of it straight away. But in 2002, they do come across a group of men working at a concrete company at the time in Webster County, and they, using cadaver dogs, they found skeletal remains which were tested but deemed to be too old to be connected to the case. Basically, they thought they'd found the van. It did lead them to skeletal remains. It couldn't have been them.
But they committed another murder.
Well, I seem to say, I actually couldn't find out what they did with that. I did Google that, but it was quite hard to find anything else, especially since this case always comes up first. So
yeah, you're fighting the algorithm on that one.
Then there was this blog post online about, and this was quite a few years later.
I'd imagine so. It was a blog post.
Yeah.
That would have been a newsletter in the 90s.
Yeah. Saying that at the time, so in 1992, the poster would have been 15. And he was visiting family in the area, and they had snuck out in the night to go and visit what they referred to as the Girl Scout camp. Now, to be clear, it's not an actual camp anymore. There were some crimes and a fire committed like years before 1992. And it was just this abandoned kind of old campsite with like some broken, spooky buildings in the woods. You know, there's a lot of dense forest in the area. So you can see why 15-year-olds might sneak out to go and have a look at an area like that. We did that.
I'd be getting stoned there.
Yeah. So I get why they snuck out. Anyway, he and his friend claim to have seen this van pull up. So they hide behind this bush. And apparently there was 3 terrified women thrown from the back of this van and like a few men. And they said that they heard the women get raped and threatened while they were hiding. And they were like scarred by this. So much so that the other boy, so not the poster, actually took his own life later. Now.
Why didn't you call the police in the first place?
Well, they were scared kids. So...
Once you got home, why didn't you tell the police? Why did it take you 12 years to tell the police you witnessed a rape?
I don't know.
Because you're an attention-seeking liar, that's why.
No, I don't necessarily think that they were lying. The police said that it was a very interesting theory. It is something they're looking at. But like, there's still nothing to go on. Even if it's true, what can you do with that information? What can the police do with that information?
No, nothing. And if anything, it serves to make their job more difficult, because they're now going to feel compelled to investigate this, but it's just going to take time. And they're never. Well,
they did. They looked around all these areas anyway. So
I don't buy that it took you 12 years, and the way that you deal with this is through a blog post.
Mm. They are deemed to be genuine, or he is deemed to be genuine, and they weren't
By
claiming
who? How?
He wasn't claiming as well. He wasn't like it's definitely those women or anything. This was just something that got sort of picked up on and looked into. But it doesn't, it was looked into, but it came to nothing. They did say as well that the girls were put back in the van and driven away. So like nothing happened there other than this supposed assault.
That's weird,
which is
though.
Awful. Don't get me wrong. If that's really what happened, it's awful for everybody involved. But like, I don't know, like there's nothing that the police can do with that, even if they determined that they were there. Which I don't know how you can all these years later.
I'm sorry for your friend, but you're a scumbag, mate. 12 years is too long to do.
He was a kid. No, I think we're being a bit harsh.
No, even if whoever that was raped.
And for all we know, he went home, told his parents, and his parents were like, "Oh, stop being a child." Like, we don't know. So I think we're being a bit harsh.
Still, 12 years later, you still feel compelled to talk about it. But he didn't talk to the police about it. He told a forum where he can get popular. He's lying, or he is a terrible human being. There's no.
I think that's really harsh.
Why? It was bad enough that his friends killed himself. It was bad enough experience for his friend to kill himself. How do you think those women feel?
And, I'm not denying that, but like
for 12 years he sat on information. Like, if they told them 12 years ago this information, maybe they could have done some investigation.
Yeah.
Maybe 11 years ago there would still be something.
To be fair, I don't know exactly how many years.
You know what I mean, though?
It was a while, yeah.
Like, you're talking decades here, and his only reason for talking about it is because it's bothering him. That's disgusting.
Well, murder.
Most likely, in my mind.
So the two sort of tie in well here, because I think it was probably abduction in order to murder. So the same questions sort of apply.
I think it was murder there.
Well, they weren't murdered there, because you didn't find any bodies. So they obviously were taken.
Yeah, but you can murder someone and move the body. It's much easier to move a dead body
Yeah,
than it
I
is to
think
move...
the guy that owns the house now has let people in to investigate, because the house has been looked at time and time again.
You can murder someone and leave no physical evidence.
Are we really saying that, though? In
1992... If I strangle you in the bed...
Yeah.
I then take your body to the car, get rid of it, come home, make the bed and tidy up. What evidence is there that there was a murder in that bed?
Well, true.
None.
But...
And there's signs of it being over-tidied before the arsehole started tidying some more.
But then you can't... You've then got... There's still... You go back to the same questions. You've got to then overcome 3 women. So it's easy to do with a gun, but strangling people takes time.
Yeah, but he could have already strangled the mum.
Okay.
The girls came home. They're much easier to overcome.
Yeah.
All you got to do is hit them
Maybe.
knock them out.
I don't know.
Knock them out, strangle them. You're done.
Okay, so I guess all right, they could have been murdered there, but there's nothing to suggest this.
I mean, it would stop her from driving the van.
Well, that's true. That would rule out the van theory.
But I also don't get why you'd get your kidnapped person to drive the van
Maybe
anywhere.
you were a wanted criminal.
You got the van there without getting caught.
Yeah. Yes, I don't know. There are so many questions, aren't there? Okay, so it has been suggested that they are buried under a parking garage. Now, apparently, in 2007, a local writer got a tip, and this inspired her to hire an engineer with a ground-penetrating radar and send him around this car park. And she didn't tell him what he was looking for. She said, run your machine round. We've all seen the machines, haven't we? You roll them over and it shows you what's buried underneath. Or at least it shows you shapes.
They detect voids in the ground.
So off he goes, and he comes back and he says he's picked up 3 distinct shapes consistent with human remains. And she was like, well, that's weird because it's 3 women that I'm looking for. So she goes to the police, but the police rule it out. Now, at first I was a bit like, why would you rule that out? That's a fairly good,
Was it made before they died?
No. But apparently that's why they ruled it out. First of all, they still to this date haven't dug it up. They've ruled it out as being too expensive with nothing to go on. The police say the parking garage was built a year after the women went missing. Therefore, the bodies would have been dug up during excavation. But I can see why people get annoyed with this, because what if the whole point of burying them there was we're building this parking garage. There's a great place to put the bodies.
I think if I imagine because of the ground penetrating radar results, they can see how deep they are. And when you're building a structure, you don't just plop it on top of the land. You dig down quite far to build the foundations, get the pipework, the electrics, all of that in. So the idea that they'd miss 3 dead bodies underneath their parking garage.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, what if the people building the parking garage were involved? Because guess what the parking garage is made out of? Concrete. And the people with the van and the other remains, who's to say they didn't pour the concrete and just think, here's a good place to put the bodies. Put the bodies in there and pour this concrete. I don't know.
It's so intriguing.
I just think it's odd that the police ruled that out so quickly. However, I then found out...
They didn't rule it out either. They said it was too costly, which it would be. It would be millions as well, to undo that.
This will put you off this, because apparently this writer person had this tip from a psychic. But then again, I don't think that should be enough to stop police investigating, because police have used psychics before.
Yes, but I don't agree with that either. I think any psychic that's been used by the police that was right was lucky and plied their craft the way they always ply it, through ambiguity and stuff that can be translated in, I see the colour purple.
Well, the writer person gave an interview
You say writer person. When we say writer person, what kind of thing did they do?
Well, I can't really answer that anymore, because she went on a documentary and it was very weird. You can watch it. I'll put a link to it on the blog. When they asked her about it, she sort of said, oh, well, I think I know what happened and I can't say anymore, And then basically she sort of said that she was being threatened and stuff like that. And then there was this other huge podcast that did a whole series on this by a woman that actually lived in the neighbourhood. And she tried to get an interview time and time again, because she did get interviews with a lot of other people. And this writer was like, no, I can't talk about it. I've been threatened. Everyone, this is dark. They're going to get you. Stop talking about this. FYI, that podcast was in 2021 and she's still alive. So
that's a perfect excuse, isn't it, when you've made up a load of bollocks?
So yeah, I do think it made my opinion of her drop quite quickly. I'll put a link to that in the blog. She just seems very off. I'd be interested in seeing it now because that was in 2007. I'd be interested in someone going over that same area now, especially I don't know that ground penetrating radar has changed all that much. I think the technology was pretty good then and probably is about the same sort of thing now. But like,
you might get a little bit more clarity, but it's ultimately doing the same.
Yeah. There was another parking lot as well. Not much came from that. I'll put that on the blog.
Where is it? Whereabouts in America was this again?
Oh, these are nearby. This is Springfield in Missouri.
Missouri.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, if you go to any New York car park that was built from the 1970s onwards, there's probably a body underneath of it. I think a lot of people are hidden under car parks, unfortunately.
But this one was built in 1993. So, okay, right. I mean, we're moving along the same lines here. I think we can probably agree that it's most likely to be an abduction or a murder. Obviously, there is the question of did they just run away?
Weird, though.
But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. They took no money or anything. The fact that she didn't even take her cigarettes, like, wouldn't you at least just pocket them? Like,
there'd literally be no precedent.
Or some clothes or something.
There'd be literally no precedent for this. Just a woman going missing with her.
Why would you take
teenage daughter? Because
why would you take the friend?
When you're a single mum with a teenage daughter, you don't have to go missing with your daughter. You can just go.
Yeah. And she was 18.
Yeah, like
so.
No, I don't buy that they did anything of their own volition. I don't think they.
No. There was a couple of people that they looked at. One was Bart, and this was actually.
Shut up.
What?
They're looking for a Bart.
Yeah.
In Springfield.
Oh. Oh my God, I've been writing about this and I literally have not put that together.
You know why?
It was Bart with a double T.
You know why they've called it Springfield in The Simpsons?
No.
Because it's the most common town, like one of the most common town names in America.
Oh, right, I didn't know that.
Like the Simpsons never tell you what state Springfield is in. So that they can...
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so yeah, we're talking about a Bart in Springfield. Amazing. Now this is Sherrill's son, so Susie's brother. He's a little bit older. They were estranged. They had all had a little bit of a falling out not all that long ago. He evidently struggled and has still recently struggled with alcohol abuse. And they did question him. I'm not really sure what they thought he had done. I get talking to the family. I get that, especially if you've had a falling out. But like, I don't know what they thought. He certainly wasn't at that time in his life capable of hiding 3 women, like with his alcohol problems. And I don't know why he would want that.
What's his motive?
Exactly. So he took a polygraph and passed. There was really nothing to link him to this or suggest that he had done it. He kept a blog up for a while that's now looked after by his daughter, just trying to keep Sherrill and Suzie in the public's mind. He got in trouble in 2019 for some sort of disturbance that the media went mad with. And obviously, like, you know, web sleuths and Reddit and all that, because he still suffers from alcohol troubles from time to time. And basically it got listed as some sort of trying to hold someone without their will. It wasn't that. He pushed past someone in a bar and got into a bit of a spat and then, you know, had an argument with them. And that was it. And they put out a statement and said, like, this really has nothing to do with that. Like, it has nothing to do with what happened. It was 2019. Yes, he's got alcohol problems. He admits that. Let it go.
Yeah, bad people have bad things happen to them.
Yeah, like, okay,
they're
fine.
not mutually
He got
exclusive.
arrested. It's not, I just don't think that he really had anything to do with this. And it's not clear to me why they really thought that he realistically was the
I don't
best
get
choice.
why you jump to this.
No.
When there's a group of people that were at the house, cleaned up the crime scene.
You think one of them was involved?
No, but I think if we're going to be like, their estranged brother 20 years later committed a crime, he must have done it.
Yeah.
Then we probably should look at the people that were actually at the crime scene who disposed of evidence.
Okay, well, how's this? Robert Cox was a convicted murderer who lived over the street.
Right.
I would have thought he was a better choice. Now, yeah, so at the time of the disappearance, he lived over the street from Sherrill. In 1996, he was in prison for aggravated robbery, and he told an investigative journalist who interviewed him from prison that he knew they were dead. The journalist said, well, is that your theory? He said, no, it's not a theory. I know they're dead. And he said he would elaborate further when his mother died. She's still alive. So we are still all awaiting that day. Police questioned him quite a bit over the years. They've gone back and forth to him quite a lot. They even convened a grand jury at one point, but no other charges were ever brought. I guess there just wasn't enough evidence. They're quite careful about stuff like this. They tend not to bring charges unless they think they can win.
Not only that, criminals are an untrustworthy bunch of people.
Yeah.
They say things.
Well, I did look into his other crime because I thought, like, if he's in prison for robbery, how did he get away with murder? How has murder not become a thing? And he was on death row in Florida for a while, but it actually got it exonerated. However, everyone is almost certain that he did it. He even placed himself at the scene of the murder. He got out of it on a technicality. That's all it was. But that was for the murder of Sharon Zellers. And she was a young woman who he abducted, I guess, for lack of a better word, murdered. So it's like, yeah, okay.
Don't shit where you eat, though.
Well, he did move. So that was in Florida, and now he's in Missouri.
Did he move? No, I meant if he was if he took these 3 girls.
Oh, yeah, why take them from over the street? Yeah.
Because your neighbours are going to recognize, you've got no anonymity if you do
Apparently,
that.
he also worked at the same car dealership as Stacy's dad. So obviously, they lived in the same town, but not on the same street. But then he would have known who Stacy was, or likely would have known who Stacy was. And he was an ex-army ranger, and the police felt he would have been able to handle difficult situations. So he probably would have been able to control 3 women.
Yeah, of that age, there would have been a lot of ex-soldiers in the area. Like, these people would have had to, would have been conscripted into fucking Vietnam and shit. Like,
I do think he's a good suspect, but there was nothing to go on. They still haven't ruled him out, but they've just got nothing.
No, he can't be listening to the jabberings of an idiot. Prison now. He wants attention.
I actually think he's probably out now, because I don't think aggravated robbery is all that long, but his mother is still alive. So if we're waiting for her to die, so he'll tell us. I don't think that's going to happen.
Attention seeking. You got that guy that confessed to about 20 murders he didn't do.
So we'll never really know there. Then you got Jerry Carnahan. This was another criminal where he had basically a girl who went missing and a girl who turned up dead in 1985. She was 20 years old, just outside of Springfield. That case went cold until 22 years later when DNA got Jerry. Obviously, that's quite a common thing at the moment, older crimes that are now being able to be solved. It turned out he'd also been tied to an attempted abduction of an 18-year-old in the area too. So people did he was looked at. Again, there's no evidence he was definitely tied to this. But it does make sense. He was clearly, that was his type, and he thought he'd gotten away with murder. Could he have actually gotten away with murder?
These are all possibilities, but we can list everyone in the town with a fucking criminal record if we want and say that they're likely, but it's also just as likely that there's someone out there without a criminal record.
Well, that's what I thought.
Actually, I think it's probably easier without a criminal record. You have a criminal record, your fingerprints are on record, your DNA now will be on record, all these different things, and yeah, I think it's probably I think it's more likely that someone that never got caught for a crime.
I agree. So a lot of people talk about Larry Dwayne Hall and Steve Garrison. I'm going to go into them a bit more on the blog because I felt like I was just going down this hole and listing all these criminals.
Yeah, it could be anyone in the area of Springfield.
What I think we need to get at is that ultimately none of them have been charged and they haven't got anything to put really on any of them that they've released to us. So
no, terrible people, but.
There was also talk of, again, I'll put a bit more of this in the blog, but there was also talk of Sherrill having ex-boyfriends that might have been into drugs and maybe devil worship.
No, that's the time.
Yeah. It was all rumours. And again, there is nothing to suggest that any of that is in any way true. Now, I've got one more pretty interesting one that I don't really remember bringing up in a previous one. What if they're in witness protection? Now, I do still have some problems with this.
Well,
so there is a theory.
I don't think it would happen that quickly.
Right, but we don't know how quickly it was because you don't really know what they're running from. Witness protection, obviously, you would be put into if you were worried about testifying in a crime or criminal activity which you had knowledge of. Suzie had an ex-boyfriend called Dustin. Supposedly, he was involved in a grave robbing gang, and this is why Suzie had broken up with him. But when I say grave robbing, it sounds pretty horrible. And it is horrible. It is.
It's a pretty low impact crime, though.
They took the gold teeth out of skulls.
These aren't masterminds. These are dumbasses.
Exactly. It's hardly the mafia, is it? As much as...
And why would you take someone else's daughter into... You're not allowed to... The government can't just take people's daughters into witness...
That's my issue with it. So apparently she had agreed to testify against Dustin in coming months and had given police a statement about what she knew. So... I guess it's possible that she could go into witness protection, maybe even with her mum.
No.
But
again, Hollywood, you're not going...
Why would you involve the friend?
The police aren't put you into witness protection because of a gang of people that are going to get a total of 6 months in prison.
Well, it's also not just that as well. But the other people have pointed this out and said, it might not be anything to do with Dustin. It might be a crime that we aren't being told about. Have they seen something?
That the victim's family know nothing about.
It's the Stacy thing for me.
Yeah, Stacy.
Why are you taking the friend?
Yeah,
Why all 3 of them? What on earth ties this together? Other than the fact that these 2 teenage girls happen to have a good night together at a party. Because from all intents and purposes, it sounds like they weren't chums really outside of this party. You know, they knew each other. They went to school together. They used to be quite close. They drifted apart. They had a great night at this party and she said, do you want to come and sleep over? It couldn't have been planned. Like you said, if they'd have seen something that night, then there's no way they could have organised a witness protection. And I don't believe they'd do it this way. Why would you do it in such a way that would create a mystery for the whole world to talk about for the next 30 years? Why wouldn't you make it out like they'd run away or actually been murdered? Or like just something else?
The police have no need to make this up. If the police or anyone, by the way, they don't put people into witness protection just because they're a witness to a crime. It has to be severe enough to warrant it.
Which it could have been. We don't know.
No, it can't. I'm sorry. They stole gold teeth.
No. But what I'm saying is, what if it's got nothing to do with him?
Yeah.
They could have seen something awful. But it's for me, I just keep coming back to the fact that there's three of them.
They might have. But the FBI and the police don't need an excuse to put someone in witness. They don't need to come up with this, like, why this person has gone missing whatsoever. They take the person, they give them a new life, and that person disappears. They don't create some sort of weird scenario where they don't fake their death.
No, well,
the person just literally disappears, and it won't.
Well, that is what happened though. They did just disappear.
Yeah, but what
so
happened?
I think that's what makes people think this.
But what happens is the police get a report. They are able to find out this information. And they stop the investigation.
It does make me wonder.
There's no way that a teenager that's just graduated high school is being taken by the government, put in witness protection without the consent or knowledge of the mother. That is just not happening.
No, I don't think it is. I just can't. I don't know. Like, even if I believe this was real, I feel like the police would have gone to Janice and just been like, "Look, this is what's happened. We've taken your daughter. You need to stop going on the fucking news." Because she's still talking about it. Janice is everywhere. I'm pretty sure if I'd rung her, she would have come on here and talked about Stacy, which credit to her. Like, good for you looking for your kid. I get that. But like, I just feel like the police or authorities would have gone to her and been like, look, something serious has happened. You need to just be sad and not talk to the media anymore.
Yeah,
for the safety of your daughter.
They'd be able to arrange contact, or they just put her in witness protection as well.
So I don't know.
Because the mother's not going to be like, I don't want to leave my life. Fuck my daughter. They're all going to go together.
She did have like other kids.
Yeah, but they're all going to go together, aren't they? You're not going to leave one family member out to die to a criminal gang because you don't want to go into witness protection.
But I just don't believe that that's what happened. Then, of course, if you do believe the Dustin thing, it's possible that they wanted revenge. So take witness protection out of it. It's possible that Dustin and his gang mates tried to off them, but they all took polygraphs and passed.
Look,
and there's nothing really to tie them to it.
If you're facing a few months to a couple of years in prison for what
I don't actually know what
it can't be much. There's a victimless crime. Like, you're taking.
It's not quite victimless, is it? You're digging up bodies.
You're not hurting anyone, though.
I'm pretty sure you're hurting the families.
All right, then.
I feel like if someone dug me up and tried to take the stuff you buried me with, you'd be fucking livid.
Well, yeah, but it's victimless in the sense of the person you're stealing from and the person that's going to be traumatized by this is a dead body.
Mm.
And all you've taken is probably a few grand's worth of gold. You haven't robbed a bank, or you're not dangerous to society. You're a fucking idiot who can't get a job. Also,
let's not forget, they got caught.
Again, if you're annoyed at the mum, you're not going to take someone else's kid out.
That, for me, I think has been the biggest mystery of all of this. It's not the mother and daughter haven't gone missing. The two friends haven't gone missing. It's all three of them. Someone in that league has got to be just collateral damage in this, but I can't really figure out what I think there. I can't really understand like how this happened because it couldn't have been planned.
No, and unless someone who confesses actually leads them to a body, we're never going to know.
That's what I was going to say, because obviously DNA has given a lot of hope to these older cases, but there was none here. So it's not like we were just waiting for DNA to come into it and try and tell us who it was. There wasn't anything to test.
Well, there would have been.
Well, there might have been, yeah, if the house hadn't been cleaned. As it stands, there's nothing to test. Don't you also wonder, just what last thing on the witness protection thing, all the other missing cases we've done, now I'm starting to think, well, I wonder if any of them were involved in something we don't know about, especially that Phoenix Colden.
Yeah, the one that
she was definitely involved in some like horrible shit, and she did just disappear.
Yeah, but again, I think that the way they do it is a lot more subtle. The people that need to know that she's going away don't know where she's going, but they know.
Yeah,
they're not just gonna, because again, look at all the publicity around that.
Yeah,
You don't want a missing persons poster.
No.
and the entire nation looking for the person you've just
the
hit.
world. I mean, we're sitting here on the other side of the...
You don't want this amount of people looking for the person that's in witness protection. So you do it in a way that it never becomes a news story.
Aliens did come up. Just because I felt like people just had literally no other way of explaining how they could just up and disappear. I mean, it is a bit...
It's more fair in this case because
they literally vanished.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like one of the cars went missing and was found up the street or anything. Like they literally just almost got plucked from that house out of thin air. So yeah, I'm kind of like not 100% against aliens. And the only other point I had just under miscellaneous was that there was a steakhouse that was open 24 hours. I mean, I don't know who needs a steak at 3 a.m, but here we are. And one of the waitresses there said that she had seen all three women having a meal there between 1 and 3 a.m. on the night they disappeared. Now, this didn't really come to anything, and they weren't really able to prove that it was definitely these women. That doesn't make sense to me, because what? Are you suggesting they went home, got the mum, went out for steak, and then went home again? Because all of their money and the cars and everything was at home. So if they did go and get steak, they would have had to have got the mum, gone to get steak, and then gone home. All within an hour, because they left the party at 2.
Yeah.
I think she wants to help, but I think 3 blonde women, you could probably get that wrong. At 3 a.m. into your night shift.
Definitely.
That's kind of it. So
it's an interesting one. It's intriguing. It's bizarre in its lack of evidence.
Yeah, I mean, anything that I've missed, I have considered minor. Like I say, there's a lot of other kind of like criminals that get spoken about and stuff like that, but there's nothing concrete.
Ironically.
Yeah. I will do a slightly longer blog post on it for anything that I have missed that you might have heard of before, but I mean, they do say as well that apparently, I said they put out 20,000 missing posters. Apparently, you can still see some of them in storefronts. That's got to be eerie as.
It has.
31 years ago. It's just, yeah. So, what do you think?
Aliens.
Okay, but what do you really think? It makes as much sense, doesn't it,
as
anything else?
I think there's as much plausibility and evidence for aliens as there is for everything else. I mean, it's a bizarre one. It's really unfortunate. No one likes hearing 3 lives are gone, or missing, or whatever. But I don't think we're ever going to know on this one until someone confesses and not just says, "I know where they are."
Yeah,
actually takes you to a body and says, "There." I don't think we're going to know.
No,
I don't. And there's every chance they're not dead. I personally think it's very unlikely. But they could be in some sweatshop in Asia by now, or...
they have done age-progressed photos, which I'll put on the blog.
And they could have ended up in, some wannabe Joseph Fritzl's basement.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen that time and time again, people being released 20 years later.
Yeah.
I say time and time again. More often than we should. It is weird, isn't it? It's a proper... Whenever we've said, vanished without a trace before, there's usually a bit of a trace. There's usually a bit of a leading theory, but I don't know that there is here because you've got some leads. I
just think it's such a shame that all of the things that were done, and no one one person is at fault.
How much do you think they really could have known if that house had just been left as is, if no one had gone inside?
You never
know.
And
also, what do you think about the phone calls?
Unrelated.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
If you just murdered someone, why would you ring their house?
I don't know, maybe like double bluff type thing. Some people said as well that he referred to himself as Bob, which of course Robert. But I just don't know that why would you do that? I'm going to give you my almost real name. Why would you do that?
Yeah, I think without any evidence to link them, it'd be really bizarre to leave a voicemail after the fact, not admitting to the crime or anything like that, just random sexual stuff that the person that no one's going to hear because you murdered them.
Well, unless you think the police are going to hear it, so you think you're trying to get yourself out of it. Hi, it's Bob. Weird sex stuff. Weird sex stuff. Weird sex stuff. See you later. And then so the police are like, oh, it can't possibly have been Bob. He was at home leaving a voicemail. I don't know.
It's you're better off just not doing it. No one knows you were there. Otherwise, you're just linking yourself.
So I don't know.
I instantly did wonder whether it was something like a cult. Not a legitimate one, but one of the devil worshipping idiot ones. That
took her?
Them, yeah.
Them.
There have been incidents in the past of these Satanists and cults working together. I mean, look at the Manson thing.
Yeah.
They could have been taken. They could have been murdered by the Satanists.
And the only real sign of a struggle is that porch light.
Which is a weird sign of a struggle.
It is, because you'd have to, I guess if you were like putting someone over your shoulder maybe and they were like flailing their arms or something. Or
We're
kicking.
Looking for a very tall man.
So I don't know. But yeah, I really don't know with this one. I honestly can't even lean one way or the other. I really don't know. And as tragic as it is, we may never know.
Mystery news.
So our headline this week is Mexican president posts photo of what he claims is a Maya elf. So I'll put the picture on the blog.
My first reaction is that our politicians are boring.
Well, let's not forget that our politician went up against a lettuce last year. So we've got our own version of weird. How British is that? Mexico have got their president putting like pictures of elves in trees on Twitter. And our prime minister went up against a lettuce last year.
Well, I didn't legitimately go up against a lettuce.
No, but the lettuce outran her.
It did. Yeah, I've seen the picture. It's a spooky looking picture, but...
So it's a black and white picture. I'll put it on the blog. It looks to me like a woman with white hair and glowing white eyes up a tree.
It sort of gives that impression, but it looks to me like an owl in a shadow.
How do you explain the hair? It's kind of like wavy shoulder length hair. A bit longer than that.
A shadow, part of the tree. It's just so unclear.
He says it was an alux, A-L-U-X, which is a mischievous woodland spirit, according to Mayan folklore. Now, of course, the Spanish took the Mayan region in the 1500s because, to be honest, it's a wonder to me these days how Spain don't govern us all. The more I've learned about history, the more I'm wondering why we are not all just bowing down to Spain. But it still is a very popular culture. And
they're not very good at it.
Yeah. And the president has shown support before to smaller cultures. But people were a bit like, are you joking? Like, you're a president and you're putting a picture of an elf on Twitter.
I mean,
people were wondering genuinely, are you joking? But he seems to be quite real about it.
I mean, there's respecting other people's cultures and there's coming across like a lunatic. It's a bizarre move for a politician, which makes me think that he's probably not faking it.
So what do you think of the elves in general then? You don't think they're really a thing?
I doubt that there's elves.
Because a lot of this, like, older cultures, like more sort of, because obviously, as we know from an episode, El Dorado, like Mayans go back, like it's an ancient culture if you go that far back. I don't know. I just feel like their folklore is a bit more embedded. It's a bit more.
Doesn't mean it's any more right.
You don't think that it's an elf of any description?
No, I don't think that many South American people think it's a wood elf either. But
I'll put a picture of it on Instagram as well. Let us know if you think it's an elf.
It's a scary looking photo, and like out of context, it's weird. But I do think if it could be an animal and some shadows that have led to this whole. Don't forget that we can't trust our own brains and eyes. I
do think it's interesting that the president chose to show this because normally leaders of countries have to like try and prevent panic, even if things are real or not real. Just like try and like I don't know how many people are really panicking over a mischievous woodland spirit, but
I'd think less of them if they did panic over an elf.
A mischievous woodland elf as well, not even like a murderous elf or anything.
Quick, he's going to tip our hats off.
I'll put a picture of it on the blog this week. Let us know what you think.
It's probably an alien. Mystery news.
So you can learn more about the case of the Springfield 3 and you can look at the elf, which together sound very bizarre, on this week's blog at mysteryoflifepodcast.co.uk. You can follow us on Instagram at the Mystery of Life Pod, and we'll be back next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.